Hey, I just wanted to let you know that this episode is coming out a few days late because we were away hosting a pastor's retreat. But I also want to take this opportunity to tell you about some really cool things that we're doing in the near future. In fact, if you listen to this episode on the day it's released, then you still have time to join our first Learning to Trust God workshop this coming Thursday. And if you missed that one, that's fine. We have one each month this fall. And this workshop is awesome. These are for people who, like we've talked about on the last couple episodes, who are struggling with questions of their souls, and that's all of us, right? We wake up every morning asking a question, and we're going to ask that question of the universe, of other people. We're going to demand that they answer it if we don't ask that of God. We're a lot of times afraid to ask God that question because we're afraid of the answer he might give us. So we've designed this workshop, the Learning to Trust God workshop, to be a short 60-minute quick way. We first start by exploring what that question is gently, and then we explore a prayer practice that helps you take that question, that soul question, to God. The workshop will be recorded, and you'll get a free ebook and a lot of great resources. So it's easy to join. If you sign up on our website, signpostin.org/events, then the sticker price for the workshop is $50. But if you use the code REST15, all caps, REST15, you get $15 off the workshop. And that's because you're an amazing listener to our podcast. So come join us for our workshop. I also want to tell you briefly that we have these incredible intensives that we've developed. Our first one is starting in October, and it takes this idea and unpacks it into a 4-week exploration where we first explore the questions that our souls are asking, then we explore why we're afraid to take those questions to God, and then we take time to develop a graceful rule of life that helps us overcome those fears, but then continue asking our deepest questions and hearing God's grace and love into the future. So the intensive is really powerful, and I think you're going to love it. So check that out. All of this is on our website, signpostin.org/events. Thank you.
Have you ever felt childish for believing in beauty, in meaning, in Jesus? Like the really grown-up way to think is that faith is a cutesy fairy tale made up to distract children from the truth, that life is empty and meaningless? At the same time, does something deep within you believe in fairy tales, in magic? Do you feel in your bones, like we do, that Narnia is more real than the world of property values and politics? Well, if that's you, then welcome to the Signpost Inn podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Booth, and today we're talking about Narnia and how it meets us in our anxiety and encourages us to see the world as full of beauty and meaning, and how Narnia reminds us that we aren't carrying the world alone. I'm really glad you're here. This show is where we explore what practical Christian faith looks like when we start with God's grace instead of our own performance. We like to cut through the BS. We like to lift your gaze from the chaos of life and help you attend to Jesus as he is revealed in his word. And of course, to help me do that today, I have my regular co-hosts. So I've got Matt Boland with me, Peter Gamble, and my wife, Lee Booth. Hello, everybody.
Hello, Brandon.
Hey, grateful to be here with you guys.
Hey guys, same.
I'm looking forward to the show today. As we said in the opening, this is about Narnia and anxiety about the world. And really the way this show came out, where this came from, is this idea of exploring books that have been really important to the heart and soul of Signpost Inn. And one of the series of books, we're going to kind of be loose with books here, the series of books that allowed us or has really influenced our understanding of the world and what this ministry is all about is the Chronicles of Narnia. Now, there is a funny joke here, which is that my experience with the Chronicles of Narnia is not that deep. I read it as a kid. My mom read it to me. It was fantastic. But I never ooh, Narnia, I love Narnia. I do like Narnia, but it never became this huge thing for me. However, I know that for Leave and for Matt, that's kind of heresy. I'm in trouble that, I like Narnia. I just want to say I like Narnia. I just don't love Narnia. But I know for Leave and Matt, right, guys, that's a problem, or you love it.
Brandon, I love you, and I have grace for your shortcomings. It's okay.
Amen.
It's okay for you to be you. I accept you as you are. And I understand you're on a journey, and one day you will see the glory that is the works of C.S. Lewis.
I love C.S. Lewis. Hey. I love the space trilogy. I was the one that recommended The Abolition of Man. It's just that Narnia never captured my attention as much as other books.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so Lewis would have something to say to you, Brandon, which is someday you will be old enough to read fairy stories again. Someday. So I think Matt's right. We are very happy to walk this road with you and be with you on that day when you arrive at an age to understand.
Okay. All right. Peter, back me up here, man.
Hey, maybe I'm in I'm the moderate party here. I've really enjoyed them, and they've been a part of my life since reading them, having them read to me as a kid. I asked Matt before we started recording, so is the Chronicles of Narnia a book or books? And he about chewed my head off for calling it a book. But I grew up with it as a single volume, bound all 7 Chronicles in one volume, and it had tape and stuff all over it because it was a family book that was well loved and read. So I quite enjoy it, and it's great.
It is. I quite enjoy it as well. It's just if I have an option, if it's Narnia or The Lord of the Rings sitting on the shelf, I'll pick The Lord of the Rings. That's all it is. It's not a dislike. However, none of this is really the topic of the show today. We're not here to debate the merits of Narnia. We all agree that Narnia is fantastic. But what we are here to talk about is something that Leave and I were talking about off the show. We've been talking about this for the last week or so. Actually, like I said, we've been talking about this since the beginning of Signpost End Ministries, because it has had such a huge impact on the way we think about what we're doing. So I want to start, Leave, to just let you just sort of describe it. You said it sort of as there's a fear you struggle with. There's this air quotes grown-up suspicion that faith is childish, that it's just a fantasy and that the material world is all there is. Can you unpack a little bit of what that fear is and what you meant by that?
Yeah, that's almost the right way to say it. It's almost something more like, I really want to be accepted. And I think, I don't know if it's the world I grew up in or maybe everybody feels this way. If I'm not sophisticated enough to be able to see through something, then I must not really be somebody who can be taken seriously. So you and I, Brandon, both know a lot of academics, and academia is wonderful and studying things is wonderful. But there's kind of that knowing smirk that I've encountered in so many places throughout my life. I imagine all of you are imagining one right now where you've said something maybe that you were enthusiastic about, and what you got was the knowing smirk. And whether that was from someone who was more sophisticated than me or more experienced than me, or someone who just took my enthusiasm and was like, you know what? There's another side of that you probably shouldn't be enthusiastic about. And so I think it's this feeling invalid, feeling like I'm living in this fog of not knowing if the world around me understands me, accepts me, wants to have anything to do with me. And that makes me feel very much like a little child. I had a very happy family and growing up time, and those little kid years were wonderful, but it didn't make it happen less often that I brought my childish enthusiasm to something and felt smacked down. And whether that was within my family or just kind of in the world, even with your neighbor friends, everybody wants to be grown up. You say something about your teddy bear that you love, and your 3rd grade neighbor is so much older than you and has that sneering sort of, your experience isn't valid and you really shouldn't have that enthusiasm because there are more grown-up things to talk about. And those grown-up things are always more boring in my mind.
Yeah, I think I'd be curious, Matt and Peter, what your experience is with something, or if that resonates with you. I will briefly say that it resonates with the ministry, because when we started imagining and dreaming about what this ministry could look like, we started with a really simple thing. We actually, for all the joking we made about I made about Narnia at the beginning, I think the beavers in Narnia were actually the inspiration for the ministry. I think as we talked about what does God want us to do, it was the story of the beavers in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe that we just kept coming back to. And it's we just want to be them. We just want to be the beavers. We just want to have a beaver dam where people can come. And I think to this day, I still struggle with sort of the anxiety about, is it enough? Are we being stupid? Is this childish? Shouldn't we be doing more? And for me, that's the experience of a grown-up ministry, like deals with all these we would answer all these questions, but is it enough to just like sort of be kind?
Well, and this is something I'd like to get more into later, but so the Beaver's Dam moment was so huge for both of us, but really, for me, because I have a home and welcome people and whatnot, so the specific imagery of people being in the cold and coming in and caring for them, there's no requirement of content understanding in the Beaver's Dam. We come from a world of theological training and education, all these things. And although those things are incredibly important and we have to have that foundational understanding of God's word and all those things, what actually has affected me in my life has been just being welcomed into the story without having to assent and fully understand the content. So when the children have this renewal of a sense of purpose and dignity of their place in the story, it's because Peter's welcomed out to fish with Mr. Beaver, and it ennobles him. It makes him part of the contributing, and I mean, dignity really is the word for it, dignified part of the story. But that's not content. That's daily and fleshed living. And that's what Signpost Inn is all about, is being in the presence of other people who give us an invitation into the bigger story in which we have dignity, purpose, meaning, but not because we're requiring you to be able to regurgitate back all the specific and accurate truths. They're there, but we don't all have to have the calling of being able to say all the right things. So that's that Beaver's Dam moment, but then by extension, so much more within Narnia that fills out those feelings and speaks to our fears of being children in this story and not being enough.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of comfort after that. But that's the beginning fear.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's kind of important to recognize that I don't have a comprehensive knowledge of the Chronicles of Narnia, but I'm pretty sure that anytime being grown up is used in the Chronicles, it's used as almost an insult or as an undesirable state. Oh, you quit acting like a grown up. I love that because there really is a sense that being grown up means you miss something. There's something about being a grown up where you are less aware of truth, less aware of the real world. There's an illusion that's pulled over your eyes, or you're play acting in an undesirable way that is ultimately more of living in a fairy tale in your own mind than actually engaging the fairy tale. It's almost like having a childlike faith is an aspirational thing, and it's going to take getting over being a grown up to get there. It's so important.
So well said, Matt. Exactly right. You could make a list of them. Uncle Andrew, the witch who's Jadis, even the Calormans. There's a whole civilization of adults who miss it. But the adults who get it, I love this, are like Dr. Cornelius, who's half dwarf. Trumpkin is the dwarf who's an adult, but he comes back to his childishness. Tumnus the dwarf is short. Even the professor at the beginning, who understands, is actually Diggory, who came to this as a child. Yeah. You're absolutely right, Matt. That's definitely the imagery, which is why you can open the Chronicles to pretty much any page and find this borne out. There's something about childishness that is not only not smacked down, and it's not elevating the idea of, somehow you're born perfect and then something or other, but there's an openness and a faith that exists within that window that the whole story of the saga still speaks to before you've become too sophisticated to listen anymore.
I think the way I'm hearing this is that, Liev, you can jump off of here's what I remember you talking about this yesterday as we were talking about this. The fear you feel sometimes, and I feel this too quite a bit actually, is I'm invalid because I believe that people matter, or that there's really beauty, or that there's quote unquote magic in the world, right? Like I think that the world is harder. I'm going to shift authors for a second, but Chesterton is the one that spoke this to me, right? It's like there's brownies and fairies behind every rock and in every bush. This world is really beautiful and it's really magical, and it's like it's okay to love somebody because they're cool and beautiful, not because they're right. And it's like the pressures of a fallen world. When we start defining grown up means you are discounting things. That's what's grown up, is when you start saying, well, that doesn't count. So I feel really alone because I want to be enthusiastic about stuff. I love stories and beauty, and I really love, I said this to you the other day, I get really excited about cool ideas, like childishly excited. This is going to sound backwards, but I was reading Kierkegaard's stuff lately because of whatever reason. And he's saying things that I'm like, oh my gosh, wow. And it's like, it reminds me of Torben, our son. I come out on the porch and I'm like, leave, you got to listen to this. And I'm flapping my hands and I'm like, you got to hear this. You got to hear this. And somewhere inside of me, there's this deep fear that I'm stupid. Like, I shouldn't be that excited about this idea. Like, I should, because that everybody knows that already. Or, yes, but so-and-so also said, and Mr. So-and-so doesn't think that you are good enough, and you didn't go to school like I did. And I feel like, don't we all feel like that all the time?
Yes, I mean, absolutely. And I think this goes back a little bit to your question, Leave, really early on of, does anybody else have this feeling of, or this experience as a kid of being told, calm down, act your age, all these different things as if energy and excitement needs to be controlled or needs to be suppressed because that's not grown up, right? That is an immature thing to do, is to be energized or excited. As a kid, that I tended to have a lot of high energy, and I had a hard problem sitting still do to this day. But I mean, what's so great about sitting still in the first place? Isn't that just that much closer to being dead? You know, it's where is the virtue in being reserved, like you said, Brandon? Like, if you encounter something that's exciting and maybe even intellectually adventurous, why shouldn't we be energized by that? And I think that's where the hurry up and grow up is a false narrative that is laid on us by the Green Witch.
People who are afraid of reality, people who don't want to be touched, people who want to be icy and cold and be able to hold on to their little self-narratives and their sins are like, no, don't get enthusiastic by reality. That might change you. That's what I think goes on.
Well, even worse than that, Brandon, is what if it is a means of control from an evil force? This is what happens in the silver chair. The silver chair, the whole temptation there is you are play acting as children, and what is actually going on is she is trying to dominate and control them and make them slaves. And I think one of the things Lewis is pointing to is, what if all this fluff and hot air about hurry up and grow up is actually one more step closer to the enemy suppressing us, our true spiritual enemy, trying to tamp down our enthusiasm? Because what if we were suddenly inspired to greatness as a result of God's true truth?
That's why I said the world of property values and politics,
Right.
because the pressure is you need to read the news. I remember asking why. Like, why do I need to read the news? And look, you need to know what's going on in the world. Why? Well, you need to be informed. Well, like, why? Well, so you can talk with grown-ups. It's like, I can't do anything about 99% of what's going on. Why do I need, Leave, go ahead. You're going to say something.
No, there's so many thoughts. I think I want to bring it back to my personal response to the witch telling me that I thought, Silverchair is a great example. She's trying to convince them the sun isn't real, that, we've seen the lamp in this little room, and definitely we've sort of expanded that into the idea of there being a sun. And I could go theological with that, but I think I'm just going to go emotional, which is I'm made to feel stupid for loving things. And I want someone to find me. I want somebody to want me to belong. And I think as I've grown up, that childish feeling has, oh, my poor heart. We know that things should be one way, and as we grow up and we discover that they're not, I think the most painful is the fraying of family and friendship ties, where those that should have found us and wanted to continue to find us, those with whom we belonged and we knew we belonged. And there's such a reality as a child in security in knowing that you belong and living in this world, watching those ties fray for so many reasons makes me more insistent when I read Narnia that I have not imagined a sun. There is a sun. And what I'm seeing in this fallen world is a dim lamp. And I know it. And all the grown-ups in the world can't tell me that I imagined the sun. And when we turn the corner here, when we are brought into the sunshine, we recognize that we breathe a sigh of relief. We say, yes, this is what I was made for. If you've ever had the great joy of being at a really great Christian wedding where people can really let loose and enjoy it, there's a relief at watching people celebrate unironically. And when we just went to a very sweet wedding, Michaela and Donovan, hello out there. What a sweet wedding. What a constant reminder of what marriage is for and what total, silly joy they had. And I'm not going to sit back at my table and say, well, the sophisticated grown-up understanding of what really could happen in this world. No, I'm going to say, no, that bride and groom joy and all their friends is, that's that sun. That's that reality. And when I see it, I'm going to celebrate it. And if loud is your thing, let it be loud and unashamed. It's this undoing of the curse, right? Huge part of the curse was shame. Cover it up. No, you don't count. You don't get to be here. It's all your fault. You've done all these things, wrong. The reversal of that then is the removal of shame. And I'm kind of going on here and getting into a new topic, but I do want to say just one more thing with that removal thing. The reason that Narnia specifically speaks to me, I think when I was a little kid, is that I don't know how many times Lewis mentions they took off their socks and shoes, or they shed their extra clothing, or, all these things where they remove things, they become freer. The Narnians themselves wear their hair natural. They don't have it all tied up and oiled and things. It's just down. And there's that freedom that we recognize, that unburdenedness that we yearn for. And we knew it was there when we were little kids to some extent. And it's been burned so many times as we become sophisticated grown-ups. But anyway, there's too many thoughts there. But pick something out.
No, those are not too many thoughts. I think that's turning the corner nicely. I think we're going to talk about how Narnia met you and helped you take off your socks and shoes. I love that idea. That's a great image. But before we do that, listeners, you have to wait because we are going to do a brief little interjection here. We're going to do some updates from the back porch, tell you what's going on in the ministry. So updates for the back porch are just where we talk about stuff that's going on in our lives so you get to know us a little better. 2 options today, guys. 1, I'd love to know if you've had a recent experience with hospitality, with somebody seeing you and knowing you and making you feel welcome, or just anything else fun going on in your life. So I don't know, Peter, why don't you go first this time?
Yeah, let's see. I've been experiencing a new friendship that I've been enjoying in these past few months that has been really kind of fun to just remove the expectations of what a friendship should be and just kind of enjoy a shared hobby with this friend that I'm getting to know. And to let that be like, yeah, we're excited about that. We like to sit down together and have a glass of whiskey and talk for an hour about tasting notes. And it's, nerdy and whatever. Maybe I should have deeper conversation, but it's like, you know what? It's been really relaxing. I've really enjoyed hanging out with my friend and sipping whiskey around a campfire and just talking and hanging out. And to me, when you ask that question of like, has there been that, experience of like the Beaver's Dam, the place of hospitality, I feel like that's been a recent, small window into that of just, yeah, there's no expectations. I'm not required to be anything. Just can kind of be my goofy, nerdy self and enjoy tasty, delicious things and hang out. And I've really enjoyed that. That's been really good. Outside of that, my life has been a slavish, taskmaster-driven thing by my boss who made me read this book. I'm just kidding. But the other thing, I read this book, Socrates Meets Kierkegaard, in like 3 days. Brandon bought it for me because he was like, this is such a good book. I'm not just going to tell you to read it. I'm going to buy it, put it in your hands, lock you in your... No, I chose willingly to read it for the past like 3 days, and I finished it. I'm already done. And it's great. It's actually tying into so much of what we're talking about here today. I'm just brimming with like, oh yes, connections. And I'm loving this conversation. So that's what's going on in my life.
I did guilt you. I did sort of keep asking, hey, have you read it? Have you started it? Hey,
That
have
was
you
like
started
day one.
it? It is a really good book. You should all read it. All right, Matt, what's going on with you, man?
So, it was earlier this year that we were talking about a project that I was working on that involved Eastern religion, Hinduism, etc. I can announce that I've finally crossed the finish line on that project. It's been going for about 6 months, but I feel like I've just completed a semester-long project, and I feel in a very Narnian sense that I have been let out of school and I'm finally leaving that behind me. I just feel a great sense of relief this week from finally finishing that out and being done with it. It was all very good. I'm really glad that I did it. I'm really glad that I did that work, but I feel a great sense of relief coming out of it.
Yeah,
Sweet.
good job. And you were kind enough to share some of that stuff with me, and it was awesome. I mean, is it available anywhere? Did you guys record that?
No, we didn't record any of it. It was actually ended up being 3 separate talks, 3 separate lessons and table discussions. Since the last time you looked at those slides, Brendan, I think I've done some more editing and some more additions, so you should probably go back and check it out. I feel really happy about it. I feel really good about it. I thought it was, I feel, like I say, I just feel good about it without being too self-congratulatory.
Yeah, it was good what I saw. So too bad you didn't record it. Oh well. Leave. What's up with you?
Just going to say, Matt, I'm supporting your enthusiasm.
Thank you.
It's
I
great.
appreciate that.
I'm still supporting
That's
the idea
great.
of starting a spin-off podcast that's the Blue Collar Scholar.
Love that. I'd listen. So yeah, sort of a Beaver's Dam moment. Brandon, you sort of asked, think about that. And I was like, I don't know. I felt really lonely lately. Things are a little changing for us, and I just feel sort of disconnected. And I'm like older than a lot of people here in town, and blah blah. Woe is me. And then it was so funny because I was like, oh no, wait, never mind. There was the most beautiful birthday party for our friend a little while ago. Dear Ethan and his sweet wife, Emmy, and being at a home that was just ram jam packed with young families and like 10 gajillion children. And these are families that we've seen grow over the years. I think we knew, I'm trying to think of who was there, but almost everybody when they were at least just barely out of their teens, and seeing all these young families and knowing some of the behind the scenes like fears of like, can we have a family? Are we going to be able to support a family? So we know some of the leaps of faith that some of these young people have taken to create these families. And it was the most beautiful moment. And Emmy is pregnant and, providing for the room, making cake, all that stuff. And it was just so beautiful. And it's something I'd actually longed for, which is not to be the host and to be able to walk in somewhere. And the fact is, I'm actually kind of a painful introvert. I walked into this house filled with people, and it's like I ran out the back door and sat in the patio with my fellow introverts, and we had a beer and talked about how wonderful it was to observe from out here. But it was just, my heart was so full. It was just so beautiful to see people loving each other and seeing the real thing happening, and life goes on, and that was very restorative. So thanks, Ethan, for being born so we could have a party.
My recent experience with sort of being welcomed into a space is that very interesting. I had a session with my spiritual director supervisor, somebody who I like share my own, like, here's what I'm struggling with in my spiritual direction practice. I was really struggling with figuring out why I was having a hard time knowing what to do and what to say. My supervisor simply asked the question. It's like, oh, so is it like you don't feel like Brandon can be in the room? And it's like, well, there's the oldest thing in the book. There's my oldest fear. There's my oldest problem. I discount myself and then project into everyone else that you're discounting me and that I shouldn't even be here. And that whatever I have to say from my angle isn't allowed, which is exactly what this show is about. And I didn't even realize it. But it was really nice to have somebody just sort of be like, kindly say, oh, it seems like you're not allowing yourself to come into the room. And maybe your contribution would be welcome. And I was like, well, we want to make, I almost want to make this, put an explicit tag on this and be like, well, shoot, and say the other word. But it was really helpful. It was really nice because I was like, I am allowed in the room. And I think maybe that's where I like that idea of taking the socks and shoes off. Really quickly, just before we say that, I do want to say, folks, if you are interested in diving into Lee Van Eye's story a little more, into knowing kind of how this stuff plays out in the ministry, we have our own book, which is not home yet, How to Be Human in an Inhuman World. You can buy that on Amazon or on our website, signpostin.org. We'd love you to pick it up. It's really comforting. I promise it will welcome you into the space and encourage you. So, not home yet. That's our book. Pick that up on the website or on Amazon. And then if you are enjoying what we're doing with the podcast, our goal, guys, is to try to be a little taste of this hospitality. Hopefully, just by listening to this, we can help you feel like you are welcome in the room, that your enthusiasm is welcome. We would love to hear it. So if we're able to keep the fire warm for you, if we're able to do that, would you consider helping us do it for others? We are listener supported. We don't require you to pay for this, but if you are benefiting from it, please consider doing that. signpostin.org/donate. Super easy. It's nonprofit, so you can write it off on your taxes. Maybe consider a $10 donation today to keep the fire going. Thank you. All right. I want to go back to that idea. You are feeling alone. Narnia comes in. It helps you take your socks and shoes off.
A lot of this has been bouncing around, and I want to try and do the thing where I need to try and articulate what we've talked about so far, and hopefully that will end with leave when this is the question, how do we take off our socks and shoes and dive in? So for me, this idea of the grown-up pressure to be reasonable, be reasonable, young Peter, and grow up is sort of like this idea that I have to stick with what I know and not do anything foolish or silly. An expression, the image that came up from reading some of this book, the Socrates Kierkegaard thing, is that reason can only take you so far, right? It can lead you to like the edge of the sea that is God's love and say, look at this reality. Or to use a Narnian imagery, by our reason, we might find our way to the wardrobe, right? That by which we may enter Narnia. But then it says, but this is what I know. So I'm going to sit here in front of the wardrobe. And the invitation is like, I just want to jump in, but it's like, no, be reasonable. Like, this is the limits of reason. I experience that tension of like, stick to the realm of what I know to be true about God, but don't dare dive in and experience him because that's unpredictable or messy or how, that's, you have to be an adult. You have to be here in this sterile realm of truth. And so your expression, Leva, talking about how Narnia has helped kick off the shoes and sort of dive in, to me, that feels like that willingness to jump, to say, I know this to be true about you, God, and I want to dive on in now. Is that sort of resonating in your experience? And then how do we kick off those shoes?
That's so great, Peter. So the person in charge keeps their shoes on, right? Like if you are leading the army, you got to have your shoes on. If you see what I'm saying? The best thing about walking into the wardrobe is that sometimes the back of the wardrobe dissolves and you're in a wood, and sometimes it doesn't. You don't control what part of the story you enter into. You step forward, and sometimes you're caught up in the mystery. And it's not like we have enough faith and Narnia becomes real or something. It is the story. It is the bigger story. Other things are happening. There are grown-ups in the best sense, Aslan being like the best of all of them, or perhaps the Emperor over the sea. Don't forget that there's also this character we never meet. Aslan's the son of the Emperor over the sea. And who is that? I don't know. I mean, it's God probably, but there's a story happening that, oh my gosh, are we invited into? So I love in The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, the children are sucked into a painting and they're on the edge. They're looking at the ship. It feels real. There's one very grown-up kid, Eustace, right, who knows all of his math facts and goes to one of those schools where they exercise, I think is how Lewis put it. So instead of play, they're exercising. But anyway, and they're standing on the suddenly they're standing on the rim of the painting, and then they fall in. And Lucy remembers from knowing how to swim that she should kick off her shoes because swimming in shoes is very hard and she's probably going to not be able to do it, whatever. So she pulls her socks and shoes off in this ocean that they've fallen into. Then they get rescued by the Dawn Treader, and the story goes on. The adventure goes on. But they're pulled into a bigger story that they don't have to know all the answers about. And that the way to enter into that story is not to put on your armor and surround yourself with knowledge or whatever, but just to allow it to be real. And for me, in my experience of Christianity, this speaks to me more than anything else. I love that Brandon wants to really dive into the ins and outs of theology. My thing has actually found in an old journal from college. Psalm 131 is my thing. I don't know. Things are big. I just am here, to paraphrase Psalm 131. That's what I love about Narnia. I'm just here. But then when I'm here, oh my gosh, there's this scene where Edmund is fighting on the battlefield at the end of Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And he's been rescued by Aslan, who has actually exchanged himself in death for Edmund. And then Edmund is fighting for the good guys with his sword. And at the end of the battle, he is knighted on the field. And I don't know if I have to explain this sort of analogy, but I'm brought into the story and I am made valorous by a fight that I didn't even know was happening. But here I am. I'm being equipped by the lion in this situation to do this thing. And Edmund has been rescued, but it doesn't make him weak. It brings him into the story. And when valor is required, there is the chance for valor. And there are things worth fighting for. Even Lucy, Aslan breathes on her at one point and says, "Now you are a lioness." And I remember being, I want to cry. I remember being like 6 years old and thinking of Aslan breathing on her and saying, "Now you are a lioness." And just being like, yeah, like I always knew that. Right? Like I have strength, and everybody is a different kind. That's why there are even all of these different species and mythical creatures, and some of the animals talk and some of them don't. And it's such a motley group. Aslan's army is this colorful, messy, all different heights, different weapons, and we are part of that army. And it's hard to tell whether they're fighting or dancing, right? Like it's just joy is overcoming all of the powers of the world. And I believe in that so strongly that the joy that exists when the way we put it for hospitality for us is that you share who you are and what you have with the people around you. Just that joy breaks up the darkness so much quicker than you would have thought it would. Connection between two human beings just sharing in something good breaks up the darkness so much faster than you might think. And we titled this having to do with anxiety, and anxiety is just one of the many. I don't even know if it's a weapon of the enemy, but it's a. Peter, you could talk more about this. How the darkness is an empty thing, and it takes very little light to overcome it. But that's something that we see happen in Narnia constantly.
I just have been struck by I think the nature of anxiety of any kind, whether it's like clinical or not, is a narrowing of the focus, a denial of reality. Like you start to focus in on, it's like tunnel vision. And that's what I think Lewis is calling out as quote unquote, the bad kind of grown up. I'm focused on very practical, very specific things. And what Levi, I hear you saying is the magic of Narnia is familiar. And what that feels like to me is freedom from my obsession over little things. How much money am I going to make? Am I saying the right thing? Like I get so fixated on that. And that's where I feel terrified and anxious. And what you're saying, I hear, is like this great reversal, but it's such a free reversal. It's just this like, hey, the world is just way bigger and way more beautiful and way more magical. And your little concerns matter, but aren't as big as you feel. And there really is a lion who's taking care of it. There's God. And Narnia just reminds you, like it it doesn't, no, it doesn't remind you. I mean, it does, but because it's a great story and it captures your attention with all this beautiful stuff, it pulls you out of your fears and stuff long enough that you sort of go, your heart gets to go, yeah, this is true. I feel it to be true in my bones, which is a different kind of knowing. Sorry, I'm going to say one more thing, leave really quickly. Somebody recently asked me, how do you know that? Do you just feel it? And I felt so angry. And I was like, yes, I do. And that's what I feel like Narnia is sort of like putting its feet on the ground and saying, I feel it to be true. Like when Aslan roars, I feel that he is in charge. And that's not just a feeling, that's a knowing. But I feel it in my bones. And so, yes, I do, dang it. Stop joy whacking me.
Okay, I have to explain Joy Whack, and then Peter, I think you wanted to say something before I get into something else about who Aslan is makes all the difference. But joy whacking. So, the most wonderful person in the whole world, Jackie Henriksen, huge impact on my life, just a friend from growing up. If her kids didn't like something in her house, like a painting or like some dorky little bunny sculpture or something, she would say, "Don't joy whack me. I love this thing. You can't make me not love it. I'm not taking it down off the mantle. It may be foolish, but there you are. So yes, don't joy whack me." Peter, it sounded like you wanted to say something, and then I want to get back in with something that is comforting simply about who Aslan is and how we get to understand him experientially.
Oh, you know me, I always want to say stuff. But with listening to what you're saying here, it sounds like some of the comfort and joy that's being described is the I'm not in charge here, and I don't have to be. The story of Narnia portrays these children who are way in over their heads. And yet that's not a scary thing. An adventure always has that a bit of fear and risk and what's going on. But it's not scary in the larger sense because there is somebody who is in charge, right? We get to see constantly a little bit behind the scenes, sometimes just as the readers of the story, or sometimes the characters interface with, oh, Aslan, there you were, right? This sense of comfort. I think that the phrase, is it in the Beaver's Lodge where the beavers are saying, something's changing, Aslan is on the move, right? And it's just this kind of weighty, mysterious phrase. The kids at that point don't even know who Aslan is really, but it's like this foundational trust that I am in the story, but I'm not the author of it. I don't need to be. I don't. And that's Brandon, you were touching on the anxiety piece. If I've got that mixed up, I'm constantly trying to micromanage my life in order to steer it in a certain direction. But if there is a good God who is the author and is on the move, I can take a deep breath. I'm not, there's a comfort in that. And a joy is what I was mainly hearing from you, Leave, is like there's this joy of just being in the adventure. So I thought that was really cool.
Narnia is more real because it's children playing, but there's real danger from their perspective. They could, real danger. They could die. But God is also, it is just kids, and the true good loving grown up is actually keeping charge of everything and keeping watch over everything, and it's really for them anyway. And that's life. That's what life actually is. My heart sings to that. God is actually in charge, and I'm not in danger, and yet it's still an adventure.
And it's okay to fully expect that incredible goodness and power to be directed toward you and your delight. And I give an example. At the creation of the world in Narnia, the lion sings a song, and the song makes animals burst up out of the ground and plants cover everything. And the song itself is bringing life so, I don't know, what's the word? It's incredibly powerful. And the song permeates everything. And so at the end of the day, all the celebration has happened, and the two children are exhausted, and they go to lie down, and they don't really have much food left. I think they have like 3 toffees or something in their pocket. And so they have like 1 toffee left over. I have the numbers wrong. You can go look it up, chapter and verse in Narnia yourself later. But they take one of these toffees and they think to themselves, what if the song is still in the ground? What would happen if we plant this? And they just go and plant it because they know who the lion is. He's bringing burgeoning life everywhere. So they plant it, and in the morning, there's a tree right next to where they were sleeping, and it has these fruits, something like dates that are sticky and tasty like toffee, but they've grown out of this game, right? This thing where they played that little game. Did you ever plant a jelly bean and hope that it would make like a lollipop tree grow or something? But it that we're like, yes, that is how it's supposed to work. And the play that we have where we expect amazing, magical, good things to happen is actually the kind of lion he is. And you don't know what he's going to do. Maybe he would turn it into a toffee tree, but he did. And Brandon, I was thinking about that very, very practically when you and I at one point decided, okay, we got 5 kids and we're going to move into ministry, full-time raising support for 5 children entering into the later part of their life. And it felt stupid. It felt childish. It felt like, how are we going to, justify this to all the responsible people in our life? And we said, well, he does he give us our daily bread or does he not give us our daily bread? And if he does, let's be stupid and go ahead and do this. And he's cared for us and surprised us in so many amazing ways because that's what he's like. It was scary in this world because we had the grown-ups looking over our shoulder and going, you're not saving for retirement. And that could have really held us back. But we said, no, he said he'd take care of us. Let's plant a little toffee in the ground and see what happens. That's who he is. That's the kind of magic that happens. You guys go on. I have one more bit that I want to bring out of the whole chronicle that's somewhat short, but the most incredible, speaks to me strongly because it's about, it's kind of about growing up. If there's anything else you guys want to cover, let me turn it over to you and then let me finish up with this. Oh, I don't even know what to call it. It's almost like a creed.
Mm. I do want to chime in there. Leave again. You and I resonate so well, and I hear what you were saying earlier about the way Aslan rescues Lucy's heart, right? And breathes on her and makes her a lioness at heart, right? And the way that they're there to play their part in the story, but ultimately, what's really happening is they are being rescued. And I think about what Dickory did in The Magician's Nephew. He's in a very awful place. I think the first time we meet him in the book is he's weeping. His mother's sick and dying, and his uncle is a villain and uses him in an experiment, for crying out loud. That touches all of us in real life, right? And just like every kid who has ever been told, sit still, be quiet, grow up, we are, in a sense, the childlike part of us is wounded, and it is scarred and told to sit down, shut up, and grow up. And Aslan saves us from that, right? And there's just this sense of, have you breathed enough Narnian air to dare, right? To have just enough faith to something as silly as planting toffees in the ground is actually an act of courage, right? Shasta having just enough courage to run away with this talking horse and look for Narnia and the North, as if do you have enough faith to believe there is magic out there and it can be found? And it's a rescue. And ironically, it is running towards the magic that turns us into kings and queens, which you might say are the most grown-up people in the entire land, right? But it's not found by pretending to be grown up. It's not found by denying magic. It's found by running into the magic.
So perfect, because what I wanted to say that it just, reviewing the little section, I knew about one part I wanted to look at, but I looked at it in the book again. And it is that where in Prince Caspian at the end, Aslan openly walks through the street, and he's not always there, right? He comes when he's going to come. He walks through the street and he gathers people to himself. And he gathers them and he gathers them and he goes past a school where kids are stuck in this little classroom. And at first it's a girls' school and they're all sort of stuck in the room. And this one little girl's looking out the window. And the teacher says, please look back at the lesson. Please, be contained. And she says, but there's a lion out there. And everybody, no, there's no lion out there. And then Aslan looks up at her and says, sweetheart, do you want to join us? And she says, may I? All the other girls run screaming. The teacher runs screaming. And the little girl with her little chubby cheeks and pigtails jumps down and joins the procession with everybody else, right? Okay, now, couple paragraphs later, there's another school. It's a boys' school. And there's a teacher, this young woman who is just so tired of teaching little boys. I don't know if you guys have ever had to have that experience before. So tired. And she's there. And then one of the boys sees the lion. Thinks of an outside. And she's not shaken at all. She looks and there's the lion. The boys run away. And it says they were never heard from again, but there was a lovely flock of new pigs in the woods after these boys ran away and got turned into pigs. But she looks out the window. And Aslan looks at her and says, "Dear heart, it's time." And so here she was as a little girl called to follow him. Here she is, and different characters in the book, but it speaks to me as a lifetime of being called and being called. And dear heart, nobody sees her that way. And she jumps out of the window. It just says jumps down, but she's looking at the window. She jumps out the window and follows the procession. And then at the last, which I still look forward to, Aslan enters a house where there's an old auntie on her bed, terribly ill, and he calls her by name at the end of her life, and she says, "Is it time to go?" And he says, "Yes, but it's not the big journey yet. For now, I'm just going to heal you, and you're going to stand up." And joyfully, she serves everybody in the room, and then she goes out and follows him. It turns out it's Caspian's old nurse from long ago who has believed and has been waiting for Aslan and has told the old stories her whole life. And I just watched these 3 stories of women at different ages, and you just have this recognition that, okay, this call that keeps happening to me in my life as I'm growing through stages is the actual call of the lion on me. In this world, I'm not talking Narnia anymore, me here in Canyon City, Colorado. The lion keeps calling, and his call is creative. It gives life, and it gives the power to fight another day. And, there's nothing better than watching Reepicheep the mouse go over the final wave and over into Aslan's country. And that's the big story. And in the meantime, I'm going to take off my socks and shoes. I'm going to sing whatever stupid song it is I want to sing. Don't joy whack me. And anxiety, I just have so much pity on it because it's stuck. It's not able to just not have to understand everything. But when he says, "Dear heart, believe him. He's the lion who makes toffee trees and fruit grow." If he says it's time, I'm going to jump out the window and go join that motley throng. That's why I like Narnia.
To me, that feels like, I don't know, you said it earlier, but I have a sense of great fear around that because, and maybe this has sometimes been my struggle with Narnia. I think I have struggled so much with allowing myself to have the courage to believe it. And so, there's a great fear I have that I'm one of the boys that runs away, that doesn't have the courage to actually believe that God is, that the world is bigger than me, and that I don't think I have been that person, but I don't think that even really matters that much because I don't know, Matt, maybe you said it, or somebody said, it's not like you have to have enough faith to get into Narnia, because I think that's the wrong way that's the bad grown up way to think about it. But the story you just told, Leave, is like Aslan comes and finds you. And maybe the call to courage is, well, that's that call to childishness in a good way, childlikeness. Can I personally have the courage today to set down my worries about, I'm all wrapped up in my worth, my money, my sin. Can I just set it down? It's not that big a deal. I mean, it's a huge part of the story, but it's not, I live in a fun story. I can enjoy the story.
I'd like to add one thing from the real world. One of the questions you had asked Brandon before was, how does this play out in reality? How does this actually, do we see people that live this way? How does this work? People who know that the lion is telling a bigger story. And I do want to share this, that we have friends in town, sweet family, Christian family, and the husband just died very young and very unexpectedly. And we went to the funeral, which was beautiful, and we went to the graveside. And at the graveside, I was just so incredibly struck because these people were saying, we don't grieve as the pagans do who have no hope. And everybody says that, right? But here's what they did. They were at the graveside, they had some lovely prayer, and then one person would start one line of a hymn. And this is not a community that we're really close with, so we felt a little bit like outsiders, but it was sweet to watch this tight community start their hymn, and then they all sang this hymn together, and then someone else would start another one. And while they were doing that, this dear man's son was the one who stood up first and took a shovel full of dirt and started to fill in the grave. And they're singing hymns while all of the community starts joining in with these shovels and respectfully filling in the grave, shovelful at a time. And I thought they'd do a symbolic couple shovels and, no, they filled the entire grave in while singing songs about heaven and about the hope, the real hope, the expectation, because they weren't living this symbolically. Many of us turn away before they fill in the grave because it's kind of ugly to see that dirt fill in that hole. But if you really have the expectation that this is not the end, then they could sing while they did this. This was not the end of something. This was the end of this chapter. And they knew that there is another and bigger and brighter reality coming. And I think that's what it means to live as though Narnia were really true. You can face the battlefield, you can even face the grave, and you can take the time and energy that it takes to fill it in, knowing that death shall have no dominion. That part will end and the real part will begin. And that's a story all of us are called into, because we will all face that. And do we know that Aslan's country is coming? Yeah, I think so. I see him act in the world. I hear him calling me over and over. And yeah, Aslan's country's coming. So no, that's too
No, it's a cult.
too dark and
No,
hopeful.
No,
Not
not too dark
end.
at all. Matt,
Yeah.
Peter, do you have anything else? Do you want to add?
I can tell by the tears in my eyes that there's, right, God present in the world, goodness, truth, and beauty. And there's something beautiful about the truest stories that touch our hearts. I feel that and just leave as you're talking about these passages. I'm like, oh yeah, oh man, I can hear the echoes of that call to me I'm staring at a little note card I've taped up in my office that says, what is impossible for man is possible with God. And that's what I feel like the Aslan is on the move. Like, I feel like for me, those are synonymous. It's just like, yes, life is not a fairy tale in the sense that everything is wonderful and amazing. There's challenges. There's some really hard stuff. There's suffering. There's real danger. But what's impossible with man is possible for God. Aslan is on the move, and I can sing in the midst of it all. And so I just moved by all this. So yeah.
I feel the invitation for myself is to, and I wonder if could be an invitation, listeners, for you as well, to maybe not let this just be a thing you've heard, but to actually wonder what, I hate to use the word practical, that's not quite the right word, but I do feel like I need to meditate a little bit on what different way of behaving in the next few hours this asks of me. Different way of feeling, different way of thinking asks of me. Because if I really am going to have the courage to jump down out of the window with all the danger and sin, what does that look like? What does it actually mean? And I don't know. I have some ideas for myself of what that means. I think I can take some risks that with relationship and other things that I might be afraid to take. Listeners, if you came into this conversation feeling maybe a little childish yourself for believing that there's beauty, believing that maybe magic is real in some sense, if you have been made to feel stupid for holding on to faith, if some part of you really feels like, the fairy tales are more true than reality, then I hope, and I know for the rest of us, we hope that you feel like you have friends, because we believe the same. We feel the same way. You're not naive. You're just remembering home. So that is I hope, if nothing else, you walk away from the podcast feeling like you're not alone. God is good. Jesus really is on the move, and the world is in his hands, and so is your story. Maybe find a wardrobe somewhere and knock on the back wall. See what happens. You never know. And may the grace of Christ go with you wherever the road takes you.
Amen.
Thanks for listening. This podcast is a production of Signpost Inn Ministries, a nonprofit Christian ministry dedicated to strengthening people's relationship with Jesus and walking with them compassionately on their life's journey. We offer spiritual direction, retreats, and lots of other resources like this podcast. Please visit us at signpostinn.org to learn more. We especially want to thank our generous donors who support our work and keep this podcast going. If you've benefited from something you've heard, please consider supporting us by making a tax-deductible gift at signpostinn.org/donate. We also want to thank Rex Daugherty for creating the original theme music for this podcast. You can check out more of his work at his website, and you can find all the links in our show notes.